Lord Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight praising your name for all of the people in this room that you created that put forth all of their energy to make a difference in this county, and those also that aren't here this evening that have spent a lot of energy making things different in our community, in the county, and the city, and state, as far as that goes, Lord. So we praise your name for bringing these people into this realm so that we can commune and share ideas and how things should be and how we want them to be. And we want to, Lord, thank you for our founding fathers, that you would by no accident bring those people to a certain part of the North American continent to create a nation, Lord. And we thank you for that also. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. And the next thing, we'll do a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was trying to think of what I wanted to say this evening about perseverance and what it takes to be just on game all the time. And Marlis and I were at Prime Rib last Tuesday night, and I was talking to one of the servers there, and I said, I've noticed a gentleman, and he's probably worked here for about 20 years, and he looks like he's probably Asian. And she said, yeah, he's from one of the countries bordering Vietnam. And he's worked here for about 20 years, and she said, you know, he's never called in sick.
Wow.
And he's just, by the way, his name is Ida. He's just a little short guy, never says anything, never backtalks, just does his work. The interesting thing is that he came to the United States on a work visa. He's still here, he's about to retire, but he put his children through college who live in that country where he came from. He hasn't seen his wife for 20 years because of his devotion to his family. And you think about it, the people of the United States, they would just lay down and die if they had to go through what he's gone through to make something of his family. And that's the kind of perseverance that's changing this city and this county and this state. And that's people like you that show up for these meetings, that go out and give these boards and these elected officials the what for. Mm-hmm. That's what it takes. It takes perseverance. It takes stamina. And you people have it. And I
Good to see everybody tonight. I'm gonna take over for just a couple of minutes and share something that's on my heart called integrity. And again, like and subscribe too. That helps the algorithm. I watch all these guys that do YouTube, so I might as well say it myself. Helps the algorithm, it gets it out there, and that's what we want. We want the good word out there. All right, are you with me? Talk to you just a little bit for a few minutes about integrity and the Constitution, because I walk around and I hear politicians all the time, every one of them talk about integrity. All right, and I feel bad because that's one of my platforms, integrity, and everybody's talking, talking about integrity, and to me, it's a dear term. To me, it means something. It really does. And so that's why I'm speaking about it tonight, because integrity is on my heart. That we have people that are in positions of responsibility, whether they be politicians or wherever, that are people of integrity. People that work in the school system, people that work for the city, whatever. We want people that understand this word integrity. And then the word integrity, I believe, is linked to the Constitution. And we don't see the word integrity in the Constitution, but we see lots of things about it. And we hear of lots of people talking about integrity and how the Constitution is a document of integrity. So one person I want you to look at this morning, I'm used to talking in the morning, so if I say this morning, please bear with me. Is this Nebraska Representative Adrian Smith. He's up on the screen there, and he says this: in order to maintain the integrity of the Constitution, we must be mindful to adhere to it. So the only way the document is going to be a document of integrity is if we believe in it and we follow it. So, you know, whether you're running for city council like I am, and I guess we're not supposed to do political things, so just forget you heard that, even though it's on the video. Doesn't matter. We need people that follow the Constitution of the United States of America and understand what it is and what it says, and we make decisions based on that document. And we also have a state document. We also have state stipulations and things like that we need to follow. And so it's important that we know those and we follow those. So what I'm talking about is integrity in elections. And I'm not talking necessarily tonight about election integrity, but integrity in the elections. Did you get that? Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I'm getting through. So the Constitution is a document of integrity. Now, we're going to learn some things from the founders and what they said about the Constitution. I'll do a couple of quotes. I'll make my 3 points and then I'll sit down. By the way, tonight, how many of you watched a TED Talk?
Any? TED Talk.
A TED Talk on YouTube. Any of you? They're very educational. Some of them are way out there, but some of them are pretty good. Well, tonight, this is not a TED Talk. It's an Ed Talk. Your joke was better. Okay, anyway. All right. Lyle likes to tell so I do too. Here we go. So this gentleman, I don't know if you remember this gentleman or not. His name was George Washington. He's our first president. And if you have one of these constitutions, I happen to keep one of these on my pulpit. So I not only preach the Bible, but I also preach the Constitution, or teach it anyway. And this is, if you have this one with George Washington on it, he's one of the first guys that quotes in here. Lyle has them. I think we have some on the table. And these are actually in these little booklets. These are booklets for you to take with you wherever you go. And I usually take one with me wherever I go, wherever I'm interviewed or whatever. It's right there with me. And sometimes I even quote from it. How about that? So very important. But George Washington said this: the power under the Constitution will always be in the people. And that's what we all have to keep in the back of our mind, is that this Constitution speaks of our rights that come from God. Actually, a Declaration of Independence speaks of that, but it's found in the Constitution. The Constitution is based off of that under this Constitution, it is about we the people. We are in control. Not the federal government, not the state government, not any government that calls itself government. All right? Number one, it's entrusted for certain divine and defined purposes. I put an extra word in there. And for a certain limited period, all right, so for certain purposes, for a limited period, to representatives of their own choosing. That means the people choose the representative. They're in there for a short period of time, and they're to do the bidding of the people. All right, George understood that, and we need to understand that. And whenever it is executed contrary to their interests or not agreeable to their wishes, their servants can and undoubtedly will be recalled. Where's the recall? Where are the people that are standing up to recall or going to the voting booths and changing everything? Because George Washington expected that we would trample the courts of our wherever we do our elections. We would all be there. We would all show up, and we would all fight against the tyranny that we see in the United States. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. All right, there's another quote here from the Federalist, number 51, and it just says this: in framing a government, this is interesting. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, okay, try to figure that one out. The great difficulty lies in this: you must first enable that government to control the governed. All right, so it seems like they have control. And then in the next place, obligate it or oblige it to control itself. And so we should be electing people that know how to control themselves. Hallelujah. All right? And, you know, I can say my own amens. I don't, you know.
Oh, I said amen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joe. You're awesome. All right, so now, why have we gotten away from this? I'll just pick on one thing. Can I pick on one thing? Can I take license? All right. It's because we're just so busy. We're taking the grandkids or the kids to, you know, this sports practice, that sports practice, play practice, piano lessons. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe in piano lessons. I should have taken a few more, believe me, if you ever heard me play the piano. But anyway, I digress. I'm all for that stuff. That's nice. But, you know, when it gets in the way, and it seems to be getting in the way now, and people are so busy, they're so burdened with making ends meet and everything, that they don't get to do the things that they need to do. And so this is important. Now, I did come here to talk about integrity, and I am going to talk about integrity. And I'm going to talk about the good kind of integrity, and I'm also going to talk about the bad kind of integrity. What to fall for and what not to fall for, if you will. From people that speak, like myself or anybody else, what you can depend on, what you can trust, and what you shouldn't trust. And so I want to talk about the back doors a little bit, because it seems like a lot of our politicians are using the back doors instead of the front door. The front door would be to stand up and tell you the truth, to tell you what they believe in, to tell you what they're going to do, to tell you who is going to guide them and lead them. And that person is you. It's not the person standing in leadership. So there's a long-standing dark art of social engineering that has been in our country for a long time. A long time. And actually, it didn't start with us. It started way back before Noah built the ark, and it came through Babylon, and it's come through societies. And we stand here today with the same thing in our backyard. And so the United States, a lot of what is going on right now is something called social engineering. I won't belabor this long, but social engineering is the practical application of sociological principles to a particular social problem. And that's in the American Heritage Dictionary. Doesn't that sound good?
Yeah.
Doesn't that just, it sounds good, but it's not good, because what it means is that second sentence below it. In other words, you're using psychological tricks to get people to do what you want and to get done what you want. And so social engineering has been around a long time, and politicians have learned how to use it very handily. Not only that, but there's human conditioning. You are conditioned to certain responses. Now, I'm not the greatest scientist in the world, but I will tell you this. There's some conditioning inside of you that you have to understand is there, so you don't fall for tricks. All right? How many of you know that there's scammers in this world? How many of you gotten calls from scammers? Just give me your credit card, or send me gift cards, and all this other kind. Well, okay. But why do people fall for that stuff? It's because a lot of time in our conditioning and our good nature, and because we're all not hardened criminals, we fall for it. And so we have fixed action patterns in our head that floats around in our head. And so we're standing in line at a grocery store, and somebody comes by and they have some items. Usually if they have a few items, I'm usually just the greatest guy in the world, and I say, "Ma'am, why don't you go in front of me?" But now if the cart is full, you might see a different side of me. Hopefully not, but Anyway, now, if the person asks you and says, "May I go in front of you?" 60% of people, this is up on the screen, 60% of people will say, "Go right ahead." Isn't that wonderful? But if you put in your sentence, may I go in front of you because, that's the magic word, that's the dark word. Because you can get a lot from people just by saying because. All right, so this is in your conditioning. And, scammers, my wife and I watch a show on where they scam people, and this guy gets to the root of the scam and then scams the scammers. And so it's kind of they fight back. It's kind of nice to see, because I know, how many of you have older relatives that came very close or were scammed? All right? So, but if you put that word because, guess what? The statistic jumps up to 94%. And it might not even apply to why the person wants to, it might not have anything to do with why they want to cut in line. It could be, all you have to say is because. I want to cut in line in front of you because the sun is shining. And people will do it. They'll let you in. Yes, sir.
I'm thinking that you could just say, may I go in front of you because, and just...
It'll work.
There.
It'll work, love.
I know.
Give it a try.
It worked on me.
Amen. All right, so I thought this would be a little entertaining to you tonight, so, all right. And so if the government says to you, you need to shelter in place, you will go, but if the government says to you, you need to shelter in place because, all of a sudden, there's a big group of people that will shelter in place. Government has figured this all out, okay? This is social engineering. This is, like I said, it's part of a dark system that's been used since time immemorial, okay? So, and then they'll tell you because you don't want to infect somebody with a compromised immune system, as if I haven't compromised, or caused somebody to get a germ or something with a compromised immune system. Of course I've done that. I've, not intentionally, of course, but I have. And I've walked around all my life without a mask. Why should I start now? Not picking on masks, I'm just saying what happens. So, I'm sad because John is not here tonight, John Fisher, because he taught me this. There's a picture up on the screen of what I call or I don't call them that, but they were called the Torches of Freedom. And a man by the name of Edward Bernays, you can look him up, you can Google him when you get home. Edward Bernays was a master. He was a Madison Avenue master at getting people to do, by social engineering, to get people to do what he wanted. And so the tobacco companies hired Edward Bernays to do a campaign because they wanted to sell more cigarettes. And of course, Edward, the genius he was, he sat back and said, well, who's not smoking? And then he thought, women aren't smoking. So then he came to the logical conclusion, we've got to get more women to smoke. And so, and you can see the attitude of the people in the picture, that the woman is smoking, she's got one lid up and smoke rings are coming up, but then the gentleman up here doesn't want to have anything to do with her. And so whether we realize it or not, we've got what government does all the time, a dialectic right here, where they're pitting one person against another to get, an outcome that they want to get. And it's through this dark social engineering. And so consequently, he comes out with this freedom campaign, quote unquote, the Torches of Freedom, where a woman smoking is going to look like the Statue of Liberty in the New York Harbor. And right away, what does he do? He gets women to smoke, and basically he causes what we call the feminist movement, at least first wave feminism. All right, let me give you 3 things that we're conditioned to do. We can realize that we're conditioned to do these 3 things, and then we can begin to see through all the stuff that's going on right now. Okay? Will that help? So I'll show you what to do and what not to fall for, and what to fall for, and what to listen to, and so on and so forth. The first book is, you may disagree with me, I don't know, but How to Win Friends and Influence People. Who wrote that? Carnegie? Was it Carnegie?
Dale Carnegie.
Yeah, and again, there's a lot of social engineering, I believe, in that book. You know, but ask me, if you want to catch me on something, ask me if I read the whole book. No, didn't read the whole book. But anyway, I've read the Cliff Notes. And so there's a whole lot of things in there. Use people's names. How many of you like to hear your name? Somebody say your name, you know, when they're speaking to you or whatever. And use their name constantly, constantly, constantly. All right, just techniques, again, that, you know, you do it from the kindness of your heart, it's one thing. But if you do it just to, you know, to schmooze people and to, you know, get votes and so forth, bad thing to do, all right? How do you get out of a speeding ticket? I've done this, I'm telling you, I've done this unintentionally, all right? So I'm guilty, all right? How do you get out of a speeding ticket? Best thing to do is to, when you get pulled over, all right, there's 3 things here. Number 1, relax, chill. Number 2, don't cry. You will go to jail if you cry. Police. If there's any policemen in here, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Don't cry. They hear people crying all the time.
What's
Yes,
the
Mark?
difference between if I cry or Tricia cries?
That would be the big difference, yes. Yeah,
30 days or 90 days.
Yeah. Good one, Chuck. All right. Right. But I'll tell you from experience, the best thing to do is when that policeman pulls up, you act light and you tell a joke, whatever it is. Policeman pulled me over one time. I was at a shopping center in Colorado. My son was with me. Boy, I never heard the end of this because he's never gotten out of a ticket in his life. Well, I went through a stop sign, I thought. And the policeman had me roll the window down, said, "Do you know what you did?" And I said, "Yeah, I ran a stop sign." And he said, "You are absolutely right, but I watched you run 2 stop signs." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, officer, do I get 2 tickets?" And he said, "Get out of here!" And he did laugh, by the way. And my son had a total fit and meltdown. "That would never happen to me. How do you do this? This, that, and the other thing." Well, I've been around a lot longer, and I guess some of this conditioning has rubbed off on me. Now, I will not. I promise you, I'll make a promise to you, and it's not a campaign promise, that I will not do that with the police anymore. All right? I've learned my lesson. There's a man by the name of Joe Girard. He was the world's greatest car salesman. And Guinness Book of World Records, he's in there. And he made millions of dollars by sending out a holiday card every single year to every one of his 13,000 former customers. All right? So this must have been later on in his life. I understand that. But you imagine that, sending letters out to 13,000 people. But here's the only thing it said inside was this. On the inside it read only, "I like you." And then his name. And that was it. Why do I say all this about liking people? People want to, how many of you here want to be hated? Raise your hand. I don't want to be hated, all right? But I don't want to go out of my way to be liked either, because it's a technique. And I understand that. I hope I'm likable enough, all right? And don't throw something at me there, Chuck, all right? So these are fixed action patterns. People want to be liked. I was watching at a forum, and I'm sorry if I'm taking a while, but I'll make it fast. But I just went to a forum, and I want to tell you something. Can I just spill my guts here? There was one person up there. I won't name, I'll narrow it down. I won't name his name. And I didn't know whether I was watching this man or and I don't believe in reincarnation, but a reincarnation of Mr. Rogers. Remember, I may have watched Mr. Rogers. If you didn't, it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood. you know, and maybe remember that, right? In a community, everything was wonderful, and he came out, right out of the box, saying, isn't this a lovely day, seniors? And, you know, it just went on from there. I'm just so glad to be here, and the sky is blue, and the grass is green, and the cows are mooing, and yada yada. And, you know, I get to go on Vic Wright tomorrow, in about 8:30 if you want to listen. And Vic Wright is really on a soapbox about people getting these cards in the mail from people. And, you know, I'm not against cards in the mail, believe me. You know, candidates putting out these cards and everything. But he's being very, very strong about, you know, you looking at that card and not making your decision from a card, or whether you like somebody, or whether two politicians send out a card and you like so-and-so's card better without reading really what's on the card. And I respect him for that, for really putting that point out there. And then he, you know, he gave a nice recommendation for us to look into a writing candidate. I won't mention her name, but Patty Junick is here right now. And it was lovely. It was really nice. So this liking thing is big, okay? Second thing, these will go quicker. Reciprocation. Reciprocation. A lot of people understand and can manipulate people with this very thing. It's called return the favor. It's the value of a gift is completely independent of the reciprocation. We are geared to reciprocate. And if we get a little something from somebody, we want to, reciprocate. Remember the Hare Krishnas?
Yep.
At the airport? How many of you are old enough to remember that? Raise your hand. Okay, all right. 25-cent flour they give you. And people would be giving them thousands of dollars at the airport because they felt like they needed to reciprocate. And so, yeah, $25 flour could equal a $50 donation. Or how about this, though? How about a little juicy tidbit of information just to get your attention? Or a story, like we heard at the senior forum. A story that took up 1 minute of that person's time, rather than giving some content and things like that, a story about experience with animals or whatever. But that inspires people to reciprocate. Are we learning something? How about drug dealers? The first one's a freebie. Yep, not that I'm not saying I use drug dealers, okay? All right. But, why? Because there's a million of them in town, and you can go to another one and get, what but you're faithful to that one, right? Or how about, the throw you a bone thing, where you either say something that you know that person wants to hear, or I'll tell you a story. These are fixed action patterns. And the last one is authority. Authority is, let me read you these couple of guys that I have here. Frank Abagnale, a nice Italian boy, probably from New Jersey. Okay, by the way, it's Columbus Day. Happy Columbus Day, all you Italians out there. Right? There it is. Thank you. This man realized he could pass the most obvious bogus checks if he did so when dressed as a pilot or a doctor. Want to float a bad check? Just, dress up. Or dress up in a suit. There's nobody out here in a suit today, is there? Oh, there is. Anyway, this is our next one. Man in a suit. Lyle, if you wore that suit and you went out to jaywalk across the street, hopefully you won't get a ticket, but you would get 3 times as many people to follow you dressed like that than dressed in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt.
Because I get respect.
Absolutely. Now, I'm not saying you're doing it, but it's just in our
I
psyche.
went to the grocery store after working a suit to get a loaf of bread for my wife. The clerk says, "Sir, would you like the receipt?"
Yeah,
If I go on Saturday in a short sleeve shirt and blue jeans and an old pair of sneakers,
you get nothing.
the clerk looks at me and says, You're not getting this receipt. Doesn't even call me sir.
We noticed that. We go out to the grocery store sometimes after church on Sunday, and we're all dressed up and everything, and, you know, doors get open for you and everything. Well, no, they do. They open automatically. But anyway, you get the idea.
But they don't get open for you.
And here's the last thing. Everybody take a deep breath and say, he finally got to the end. Here it is, okay? The business card. The business card. How many of you remember that show, The Rockford Files, on TV? What did he have? He had a printer in the back of his, what was that hot car he had? Camaro or whatever? And he'd bring that up and he'd make a business card and he'd get in anywhere with that business card. And, you know, you can print campaign cards. I print campaign cards. Not saying that's the wrong thing to do. I'm just saying, don't manipulate. You can look so impressive and not be very impressive at all. All right? Let the content of what you say and the content of your character be what comes across. It says here you can put anything that you want on a business card or on a campaign card. This is a fixed action pattern. Just to help you to remember this, last thing, I was going to bring a hairdryer tonight and I didn't bring a hairdryer. What could you do with a hairdryer in a presentation? Well, if I brought a hairdryer and a captain's hat and I dressed in a blue suit and I went out on Lakeway Road and I had that captain's hat on and I had that hairdryer and that blue suit and I stood on the sidewalk and I pointed it, you would be surprised how much traffic stops. Even if they know it's a hairdryer.
It looks like a gun.
Because it looks like a radar gun, yeah, or whatever. But, you know, we're so gullible. We are so gullible. And let's all take a deep breath now and realize that, you know, we're intelligent. We're intelligent people. The founders wanted us to examine who we're talking to see if they should represent us or not. And I know, you know, people can be deceitful and, you know, I can be fooled. Everybody in this room can be fooled. But, you know, when we understand some of the things that go on behind the scene, I think it'll be a lot more helpful since the 29 days till the election. 29. So I hope this helped. And thank you. Because all this stuff a lot of this stuff that's being done is just a house of cards. And once you see it and pull out the one card, it all comes down. And you get to see Dennis Jack. And I met him the other night and just got a great vision for the hospital board. And I kind of cornered him in the parking lot and asked him if he'd come in. And he came in. Wow. So why don't do we have a microphone for him? Just come up and introduce yourself. He's running for school board.
No, hospital.
Excuse me, hospital board. I always get those mixed up. Just like Jack Dennis, Dennis Jack. All right. I talk fast and then I get mixed up on my words. Thank you.
Thank you. I would not want to run for school board. No, thank you.
Yeah. I don't blame you.
Yes, I am running for the hospital board. I've been in healthcare administration for more than 30 years. I've ran boards for all that time. How many of you have had a problem with your billing from the hospital?
Both hands up.
Yeah. I mean, I cannot fathom how they can do it so wrong. And one of their answers is, well, this new electronic medical record we're getting, it's going to fix all that. You do realize that doesn't go into effect until September of next year. That was one of the things they got when they affiliated with University of Colorado Health. UC Health was supposed to give them access to this electronic medical record. Now it's going to cost them $15 million, and it's going to take 2 years before they get it rolled out. I cannot fathom the kind of decisions they're making down there. I will not tolerate that. We will work for transparency. One of the other things you guys may have read is the recent firing of all the ER doctors in hospitals.
Yes.
If you followed the recent article in the paper, they still don't have the details worked out for that, but they were all told you have to leave by the end of the year, or you have to go to work for this other company. We don't know what the contracts look like, or you don't know what you're going to get paid, but you have to make your decision. And we're still working out the details. Why would you do that? That'd be like asking a woman to marry you. You don't have a job, you don't have a house, you don't have a ring. It just baffles me. But that is not how we would run the hospital if myself and Mark Hoskinson get on there. Keeping in mind, the hospital board has one employee, and that's the CEO. The CEO employs all the other people. So he has to report to us, but he has to do it right. I sat through their board presentation when they brought the budget for the next year. Last year, they lost $25 million. This year, they say they're going to lose only $500,000. It'd be a remarkable turnaround that every one of us would like to do in our own life. But when they made the presentation, they only showed revenue. They didn't show expenses. Now, I don't know about you at your house, if all you have to worry about is the income you have coming in, you don't have to worry about any expenses, but I'll be ahead. But of course, that's not the way you do a budget. And when I asked about it, they said, oh, people don't really care about that. I said, well, we better, because the hospital is going to be bankrupt by 26, their own statements, if they don't fix things. So I do hope you can consider voting for me. Any questions? Is this a question and answer, Ben? You-
Yes, it is, absolutely. I'm
Yes.
glad you-
I have a neighbor who works at the hospital.
You need the microphone.
Oh, well, my neighbors worked at the hospital for years, and I know another person also, and they're very concerned about what they call Friday firings,
Yes.
that it's happening on a regular basis, and they're concerned that we're going to lose most of our care, and it's going to turn into just a lab. What can you do to stop this?
They do have a tradition, Friday at 6:30 is when he sent out that letter to everybody. It's a good way to do it if you want to make sure the press doesn't get a hold of it, run it before you can get a chance to spin a little bit more. But Colleen used to do that, and apparently the new guy thinks that that's a good model, and that's not acceptable. And the fact that he made this announcement before they had the details worked out, that's not acceptable either. I mean, baffles us. We would call him on the carpet for that and make sure that he's more responsible and more thoughtful. The administrator's a very nice guy. Matt, very nice guy. Came from a little tiny hospital in North Dakota. This is a much bigger job than that. And I have no clue why the University of Colorado Health System chose him as the administrator. They're the ones that had to present him as the administrator. I went to one of the board meetings, and the UC Health person that was presenting their affiliation update, I looked and she had a little notebook, and on the front of the notebook was a 4x4 sticky pad, and she wrote a couple of points down. And that was her report. That was it. And the next board meeting, her report was from the very back of the room. She didn't have a microphone and you couldn't hear a thing. And it's all broadcast, so the public can know what's going on, but nobody can hear anything. And then next week, the 20th, they're having a board retreat with all the current board members to plan for the next year, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before they potentially lose 3 of their board members. Is that a good use of the hospital's funds?
No.
I can't figure that one out.
Is that local, or is that?
In Hewitt, at the golf course, at the very nice golf course, which probably is not cheap.
That explains why my wife was sent to Rapid City for an emergency removal of a kidney because there's no doctors in your hospital? Is that what it is? Because we first went into the emergency room, then she was sent out to ICU, 5 days, and then sent to Rapid City because they had no one here that can even diagnose her.
How is your wife now?
Recovering.
Well, I'm glad for that.
I had to do 5 trips back and forth to Rapid City with the gas. It's incredible, but what it means, we have no one here with any specialty?
We have some, I don't know what that would have been. I'm not a doctor, and I never played one except on TV when I get to wear a white coat. But that would probably be a specialist, like a nephrologist, and I don't think we have a nephrologist here. Now, a general surgeon with the proper training could have done that, maybe, but they also have had limited hours into the OR because they don't have enough OR staff. So it used to be the doctors, surgeons could do surgery 2 or 3 times a week. They've all been cut back to 1 day every other week because they don't have enough staff to run the OR. Now, that's an issue that all the hospitals in the country are going through, though. It's not just here.
Yeah. Oh, he's got a question. I'll take the mic.
Do you have an affiliation with a hospital?
No,
None at all.
no.
What about the new clinic that's going in?
We're building that clinic. I'm the director for that clinic. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
All right.
But it's not affiliated with the hospital. We
No,
are
it's
totally
not.
freestanding.
Your medical philosophy is probably a little different than mainstream medicine.
Well, we believe in primary care, and our focus is going to be to help you have a longer health span. Health span is defined from the time you're able to put your own shoes on until the time you have to have somebody change your diaper. That's kind of your health span.
So your objective then is to make people well and keep them well?
Yes, with nutrition, exercise physiology, medication management. You know, a lot of people get 10, 12 medications from different doctors. And I can promise you, there's not a pharmacy company out there that did polymedication studies when they got their drugs released. Just can't do it. I mean, I volunteered to be on some of those pharmacy studies just because I wanted to see what it was like. And every one of them says, are you on any medication? Well, if you are on a medication, you don't get into the study because it skews the results.
So I see medical profession in this town as using humans as money streams.
That may be true, but I will tell you at our clinic, in a lot of clinics, let's put it this way, you get 15 minutes with your doctor, if you're lucky. We're not doing that. It's an hour with a doctor if you're a new patient, maybe a half an hour if you're following up. A lot of hospital systems use what they call RVUs, which is really in the weeds, but basically it's work performance standards. You have to see so many patients or you get fired. And we're not doing that. We don't even have those measurements in
I
our
spoke
system.
with the doctor 2 Fridays ago for about a half an hour. I didn't get that impression from him. His whole philosophy seems to be different than what we experience with healthcare in this town.
Good. What's his name? Maybe we should recruit him.
Was it Hutchinson?
Mark
Yeah.
Huskinson?
Huskinson.
Mark
That's who I
Huskinson.
talked to 2
Yeah,
Fridays ago.
and he's the other gentleman that is running with me for a board spot.
It's not, it's an unpaid spot, right? It's not a salary position.
Oh, yeah, it's unpaid.
It's unpaid.
Would you tell us a little bit about Mark?
Mark is a internal medicine physician. For years, he worked for the very large company called Kaiser. Probably heard of Kaiser. He was in Hawaii, and then he came to Denver. And then his son, William, who is a hospitalist who worked at the hospital, moved up here, and Mark thought, well, I'll move up to Gillette. That sounds like a good place. Colorado's getting too crowded. And he worked for the hospital primary care clinic for 4 years until Colleen, the previous administrator, started sending out 6:30 on Friday night, firing him. And so he and his son, along with their other son, have decided we want to build this state-of-the-art clinic here. And they pulled me up here, and that's how I got hired. But we don't want to go into my job interview, but fascinating.
Well, we enjoy this. Now, is there anyone else that will work with you on the board?
Well, there is another candidate, Bill Rice, who is
He's
a,
on my list.
yes, he is a new candidate. He's not incumbent, but he worked at the hospital for about 20, 25 years as department head and overseeing multiple departments. He knows a lot about how the hospital works and how there are some great people that work down at that hospital. And he knows them, and we want to keep them. We want the hospital to survive. Myself, I need the hospital to be there. Our clinic needs the hospital to be there because there's going to be a lot of things we can't do. We need the hospital for our community. We lose the hospital, our community will never grow. There's not a community in this nation that's lost their hospital that the town has grown. One more person. Sir?
I was wondering your thoughts on the ambulance service. and why we're going in partnership with Sheridan or anybody else on this.
I have some thoughts on that. I know that there was another company that wanted to take that contract in Sheridan, and they told them they would need $1 million. This is a company that's nationwide and has a very good experience nationwide in providing ambulance services. They know what it costs, they know how you find staff. Ambulance services across the country have a shortage of staff. And the previous provider, well, I guess they're there now until we take over, said, I need $270,000 subsidy, and we'll bill for everything else. And that's what they said they would give us. So we've never done regional ambulance service. We don't know what we're doing. A nationwide company says it's going to take $1 million, and we got the contract. And after the first year, we get to reassess that amount. But it's a 3-year contract. Now, I don't know why we think we need to take care of Sheridan. They got their own tax base and they got their own hospital. We're not going to get patients from Sheridan. More than likely, if a patient needs follow-up care or higher level of care, I bet they go to Billings. What do you think? They're not going to come here. So I think it's ridiculous that they're doing this, and I'll go on record saying that. I sat at the board meeting when they brought up the idea of this ambulance agreement, and they got a motion that said, we're giving you permission, hospital administration, to create the LLC. And then somebody said, well, I want clarification. After we create the LLC, the Limited Liability Corporation, which will be separate from the hospital to protect them so they won't have to spend that $750,000 difference that I mentioned, the administrator said, no, once you approve it, it immediately goes into effect. We won't have time to come back and tell you what's involved in it. And then the administrator said, well, we need to do this because the governor has asked for regional hospital cooperation to create ambulance services. Did the governor give any money to fund that? I believe we call that unfunded mandate, but that's probably a whole nother debate and discussion for you.
But I caught the interview last week. He was talking to someone who's running for your board. And I don't know if it was you or the other gentleman, but when they asked him about the mask mandate, he says, the hospital receives money from Medicaid and Medicare, and because of that, you guys have to follow their mandate. Is that still around? Because in Rapid City, no more mask mandate.
The mandate was lifted. CDC said you didn't have to do it anymore. So there are some hospitals that have decided to keep doing it. Now the staff are encouraged to wear masks, but visitors do not need to.
And that's not entirely true, though. They have dropped the mask mandate if you've been vaccinated. If you have not been vaccinated, you are required to wear a mask. Oh, my niece works there, and she's required to wear a mask because she has not been vaccinated.
Staff.
Yeah, because she has not been vaccinated. Yeah.
Well, and you know, the whole issue with COVID, I'm not a doctor, so I don't feel competent to answer the issues, if we should be wearing masks, if we should have boosters, if we should have vaccine. I don't really know enough about that, but I think that we really need to follow the advice of our medical professionals in this community or in the nation to help us do that the right way. But I know there's a lot of people that don't agree with that, but one right here, I think, and that's okay.
That's all right. Rand Paul stood up and said the same thing, so, you know, he got booed, so.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, I've had COVID, you don't want it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else? I know I've taken a lot of your time, which I really appreciate.
Repeat your name, I didn't catch it.
Dennis Jack, and Dennis Jack. Jack is the last name, Dennis is the first name. Lots of times I get called Jack Dennis, so it happens.
like I just did.
Yeah, it happens all the time. I don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's 2 first names.
Do you test people for COVID before treating them?
No, no. if somebody comes in with symptoms, we might test them for COVID and many other things. But we don't, it's not a requirement by any means for us, no ma'am. There was a time when you had to be tested before you could have surgery. Early on, we learned a lot about that, horrible about that. But if you've had COVID, there's some people with some long-term effects, heart, lungs, and that's one of the things our clinic's gonna work on, trying to research.
I'll just volunteer this information. Probably most of us are on ivermectin.
Yeah,
And
if
you
it works.
You can get it at the feed stores.
Sure.
I know that sounds crazy,
No,
but
no,
it
no.
works.
Oh,
This
Yeah,
is
but what
Wyoming.
yeah,
When I asked about the mask and the mandates, the reason is that your hospital must be receiving in the millions Medicaid and Medicare money, right?
oh, yeah,
And so
absolutely.
what I'm saying is, right now, you mentioned in the beginning that a $12 million program has to start. 12 million, that's a lot of money for whatever you're talking about. And I'm saying, if you're receiving that type of money, why is it that by 2026, we might have a Costco where we have the hospital?
Costco, where we have the hospital, that's a motto right there.
It's a big building.
But who wouldn't want a Costco? I mean, that would be nice.
It'll be a big building, but no.
They do get a lot of federal money. They get money in several different ways. One of the ways they get money is because they're the sole community hospital. There's extra money that comes to them for that. They deliver babies. There's an extra piece of money that comes from that. It's called DisPro, disproportionate share of taking care of Medicaid babies, so you get extra money. Hospitals that don't deliver babies don't get those funds, so there's, cost-benefit analysis there. But yes, they get a lot of Medicare money, they get a lot of Blue Cross money, they get a lot of Aetna money, they get a lot of Humana money. They just don't bill for it very well. And so
Oh, you're
often,
billing me perfectly.
they,
Sorry, you're billing me.
last year they had to
I might have
write
sell my
off,
shoes.
last year they had to write off millions of dollars because they did not bill in what's called timely manner. So a lot of insurance companies say, if you don't send a bill out in 90 days, we got it for free. Medicare, it's a year. So you really should be able to get a bill out for a year. You really should be able to get a bill out in 90 days. The industry standard in the United States is you're getting bills out within 10 days. A really efficient hospital can get them out in about 5 to 6 days.
Well, I
So,
lived a block away from Colorado University Hospital, and Colorado Boulevard and 9th. And I gotta tell you, their buildings, on the decoration alone, they can rebuild a new hospital here. And I went to Platt, in Rapid City, the same thing. The lobby alone must have about $1 million in decoration, when they could have put it in other things.
do you think a grand piano in the lobby adds a lot to the patient care?
You got one
Yeah,
here.
we
you
got one
over
here.
there too.
It's pretty, sounds nice, but, I'm not sure how much it helps us.
We're concerned about the hospital.
Yeah,
Well, so am I. I have a full-time job. I don't really need to run for the hospital board. Their board chair, I don't know if you heard his interview on Bison Radio. He said, Basin Radio, not Bison, sorry. I was talking about Buffalo earlier today. On Basin Radio, he said 3 times in his 20-minute interview, my wife does not want me to run. Another time, my wife does not want me to run. And the third time, my wife probably won't vote for me. It is an unpaid position, and it does take a lot of time. But if your wife isn't going to vote for you, I don't know if you should be in the pool, but that's my personal feeling. I know my wife will vote for me. Hopefully more than once, but that's a horrible political joke.
That's illegal. You run a Democrat?
Oh, no, she's not a Democrat.
Well, thank you, Dennis. We did a mock forum together
Yes.
about 2 weeks ago or something like that. I don't know, it's all a blur to me, but, and I was very impressed, and so I saw him in the parking lot, cornered him, and you are a good sport for coming. You're sight unseen, didn't know who we were or what we were, but
Oh, I've had
This
it
is
before
super.
I came in.
Oh, you vetted me. Oh, very good. You are smart. Very good. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. One other thing before we dismiss tonight, and that is next Patriot class will be November 14th. 7 p.m. We'll be doing committee reports from representatives, election review, local precinct reporting, and 2023 upcoming legislative sessions, and much more. Hope you can be here, and get on the telephone, invite some friends. Let's fill the place up again like we used to, and get everybody to come out. And we've got a lot planned. We're not going to slow down. We're not.
We're winning.
And we're winning. Remember that. We are winning.
Yes.
Like, sound like Donald Trump. We're winning, we're winning, we're winning. But